Good afternoon, everybody. Joe here at Simple Life Show. It is September 19, 2019. I really want to talk about something important. I want to make it kind of short and sweet because there is a lot of, there's a lot of problems in this world, and climate change is obviously one of them, right? We talk about it from day to day. It's in the news a lot, and what's more important is that climate change denial needs to be punished, right? And anybody that denies that there's climate change needs to be jailed. They need to be punished. They need to be socially ostracized, right? We've seen this so much in the media right now, and it's complete bull. And a lot of people just don't want to see it for what it really is. I mean, of course, there is no debate on the whole climate change, just like there's no debate on evolution or anything like that. So I think this is actually more or less of a debate, really, at this point. When it comes to climate change, because number one, we can all agree that there is climate change going on. This is not something that is debatable. Okay, what is debatable is, are humans really causing all this? Is it really all of our fault? And I think that is what's really being debated here. Now, of course, we've seen a lot of hurricanes over the last year or so. Here more frequently with Dorian that tore through the Bahamas, caused a lot of damage, killed a lot of people. Obviously, a very tragic thing. Now, whenever things like this happen, whenever there is different types of tragedies that happen, we look at climate change as the reason for everything. We look at our CO2 emissions as the reason for all of this stuff happening, and people eat it up with a spoon, and then they hit the streets with their cardboard signs and their crayons, and of course they leave huge messes with plastic water bottles all over the place. But we're not even going to talk about that because we don't have a lot of time. But when it comes to hurricanes, the first point is what I'm going to say. I want to make three main points. The first point is that natural disasters and hurricanes and climate change are not affected. They're not. They don't coincide with each other. There's not a correlation there, and we can see this very simply in the next video coming up.
In today's news cycle, it's unlikely to hear about powerful storm systems or hurricanes without scientists, meteorologists, and reporters blaming it on climate change. But the simple truth is man-made warming does not cause hurricanes. As carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions have increased, there have been no trends in global tropical cycle landfalls. Before Harvey and Irma, the United States was actually in a 12-year hurricane drought. And more importantly, the average number of hurricanes per decade reaching landfall in the United States has fallen over the past 160 years. These are not the conclusions of climate skeptics. They're conclusions drawn by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, an arm of the United Nations, and our own National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The IPCC recently wrote that no robust trends in annual numbers of tropical storms, hurricanes, and major hurricane counts have been identified over the past 100 years in the North Atlantic Basin. The IPCC also reported that there have been no observed trends in global tropical cyclone frequency over the past century either.
So yeah, that just really kind of just breaks it down there for you, and it kind of makes my point when it comes to, all you gotta do is look at the figures, look at the cycles that happen when it comes to a lot of these tragedies and a lot of these climatic events as they've been so intertwined with climate change. And of course, we have to be careful of that. So whenever something like that happens, yeah, well, guess what? That's just further verification that the entire world is ending, as AOC has told us, that, the whole world's going to be ending in 12 years. I don't know where she came up with that figure, but whatever. That's fine because everything works on a cycle. So in the next 12 years, yes, we'll probably see even more hurricanes. We'll probably be seeing more fires in the Amazon, as we recently see. Of course, all you have to do is just kind of look at the cycles with fires in South America. You can see that this is something that is, yes, it's tragic. Yes, it's horrible when it happens. Of course, this is something that the earth goes through. It goes through changes. It goes through cycles. We have the audacity of looking at everything through our human mind, through our human eyes, as if, when things like this happen, it's not supposed to happen like this, because bad things aren't supposed to happen. Well, guess what? We live in a natural world, and then when the natural world, things like this happen because things go on cycles. We have a birth and we have a death cycle as well, but we don't. When someone dies a natural death, we don't say, "Wow, oh, that's horrible. I can't believe that happened." Yeah, well, when people die, we miss them, but the Earth goes through changes just as well. Okay, what the problem here is that whenever there is a lot of these issues, a lot of these things that happen in the environment, then the faction and the agenda, those who push the leftist and progressive agenda, will use this against the hordes and the masses and the uneducated. I'm not calling them stupid or anything. I'm just saying that they're less informed about what the actual science is really saying about this kind of stuff. The science is saying, yes, the Earth is warming, but it's not really sure why it's really happening. Could it be because of our carbon footprint? I don't know. I mean, that's really what we're trying to answer here. But what really happens is that whenever someone wants to question the official narrative, well, what really happens is that they get punished for it. There has been calls for punishing for skeptics for a long time when it comes to climate change. And it's not just being socially ostracized. No, absolutely not. What they want to do is they want to throw you in jail if you question the official narrative from not only the government but also now this isn't just the government. This is the shadow type of conspiracy, right? That's going on that wants us to all believe that we're going to be dead in 10 years, and that's simply not going to happen. I'd be willing to bet my life on it. It's not going to happen. Is the Earth warming? Yes, it is. It's warming, but it's also within the statistical error. I guess they call it statistical mean error or types of. I'm sorry, I got tongue tied, but it's within the statistical error as far as the rate at which it's changing. Now, what they will not tell you is that the amount of temperature change that is happening is and the way that it's being measured. It's number one, it's only being measured on land and not on the ocean surface. Of course, the ocean surface takes up 70% of the amount of the Earth. So they're not telling you that. They're also not telling you that the most of these temperature sensors are located near asphalt and also cleared land where it's actually a lot hotter. Our cities are actually becoming a lot hotter because we're putting concrete everywhere. Okay, so this is something that I'm not saying that I'm not trying to say that the Earth isn't warming, because I know it is. It is warming. It's going through a gradual warming, and this is all part of the cycle change. The second point I want to make is not so much that the skeptics are being ostracized, but it's really all about control and power. And I think we can all agree on that. Anytime that there is a tragedy or something like that happens, then there is a power grab. It's really easy to control and manipulate people's minds whenever there is a threat of death. And I think they're throwing that at you all of the time. It's sales 101. It's marketing 101. It's what Al Gore did back when he did An Inconvenient Truth. Of course, he was saying that within a few years, then the polar caps were going to be melted. Of course, we have seen that has been not happening. The polar caps go through a cycle just like everything else. We see them where they melt, and we see when there's more ice production. And we can see this through polar ice caps, and we can see it through core drilling. Look up, do more research on core drilling. This is something that, there's so many different facets to this that it's really hard to kind of go over everything all at once. But I wanted to cover three main things. The second thing I really wanted to cover is mass extinctions. And mass extinctions is something that is brought up a lot when it comes to the debate on climate change. Okay, so whenever you're in a debate, or whenever you hear a debate, or anytime the climate change has come up, this is invariably going to be one of the main points or something that is brought up during the conversation, that all these species are being wiped out, thousands a day, and the amount of, or the rate of extinction has gone up 1,000-fold. Now, this on its head sounds extremely terrifying. It means that 10% of all species are, that are going to be eliminated every single year if you actually do the math. But that's simply not what's happening here. There's an article from Yale done not too many years ago, a couple years ago, but nobody knows whether such estimates are anywhere close to reality. They are based on computer modeling, and documented losses are tiny by comparison. Only about 800 extinctions have been documented in the past 400 years, according to data held by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, out of some 1.9 million recorded current or recent species on the planet. That represents less than 0.1%. Goes further by saying, nor is there much documented evidence for accelerating loss. It is in its latest update released in June, the IUCN reported no new extinctions, although last year it reported the loss of an earwig on the island of St. Helena and a Malaysian snail. And some species once thought extinct have turned out to be still around, like the Guadalupe fur seal, which died out a century ago, but now numbers over 20,000. This is really just a main point that I'm trying to get across, is that a lot of what's being told to you are simply lies. They're just lies. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but the rate of extinction of at least vertebrates are nowhere close to what they're telling you. Now, the invertebrates is really where they're getting their 1,000 plus or whatever. What they're really discussing here is a lot of the invertebrate snails, and they're basing a lot of these numbers on the extinctions of snails and the rate at which snails are being or going extinct. And they are taking this and they are plastering it over the entire world and the entire ecosystem, and they are saying that within a certain amount of time everything will be extinct and we'll all be dead. Of course, I know that probably the sources that are coming up with this hogwash are probably feeding AOC a lot of her junk too. So, I mean, really, what I'm trying to say for the second point here is really important, is that you really need to do your research when it comes to a lot of this stuff, because a lot of the so-called information that's coming out, a lot of stuff is taken out and it's not within context. You can say that there's 1,000-fold increase in something, absolutely, and it can sound really terrifying until you actually put it in context. And you actually apply math and physics and everything along with it, and it doesn't look so terrifying anymore. The world is not as terrifying as you think it is. I know that there's a lot of doomsday cults out there, and the liberals and the progressive left are one of them. They want you to believe that, number one, everything's fine with the world. They want to look at San Francisco and say San Francisco is a wonderful place to live, but then they want to say that the world is ending because some snails are going extinct. I mean, it's the absolute, utter, complete, just cavern of stupidity, and that we've all fallen into it from one point or another. But more people are falling in, and they have no desire to dig themselves out of that cavern of ignorance, and they love their ignorance because it's comfortable and it supports an agenda for a group of people that they support. Of course, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. I mean, you have freedom of speech, but at the same time, the people out there that have not been indoctrinated to this kind of stuff need to do their own research, because no one is going to spoon feed you this stuff. I'm going to try as much as possible, but I can't spoon feed everything to you. You have to do a little bit of research, and I know that's hard. It's hard for me. I don't like doing it. I don't like researching stuff, but what I like and what I advocate for is simply the truth. It's always going to be the truth, no matter where it leads. But we have to think about this control of power that is going on right now within the leftist and progressive agenda, and even some of the Republicans out there. And it's all turned political. And when it's not political, science and politics should never go hand in hand, but we see it all the time. So whenever a certain result is needed, guess what? The grants go to the scientists that will produce what they're looking for. It's the same concept when polls are out there. Everyone was so sure Hillary was going to win. All the polls said so. They were bought and paid for to convince people that Hillary was a lock. But people didn't believe that. They decided to go ahead and just do whatever they wanted to do. Well, this is, that you can do that, and you can apply that same type of mentality with everything that you look into, everything that you research. And climate change needs to be one of those things, because since everything that is happening is being tied to climate change, it's only going to get, the power grabs are only going to get worse. The taxes are only going to get higher. And all for what? This is my third point, and my third and final point here, that there is a reason, okay, that those on the left and the progressive agenda and those who do not want you to know the truth, they do not want you to know and understand a certain concept that will completely and utterly destroy this entire type of debate. And what is that? That is what's called the carbon cycle. Now, if you'd ever heard of the carbon cycle, I suggest you go out and run out there, get on your computers. If you've never heard of this, read up about the carbon cycle, because I've wanted to talk about this for a while. This is one of the subjects that I've kind of put off, but I talk about it within my own circle a lot, and I think that I really need to make a video about this. I should probably make it its own video, but I'm including here because it really is a knockout punch when it comes to the entire debate. Now, the debate centers around one thing, and what it's that? It's CO2 emissions, right? It's the douchebag in his Hummer that's just spewing pollution all over the place. He's ruining the ecology for the snails out there, and that's why they're all going extinct. That's what they want you to believe, but that's not the truth. The carbon cycle is complex, but it's really simple. Carbon is the backbone of life on Earth. We are made of carbon. We eat carbon. Everything is carbon. And our civilizations, our economies, our homes, everything that was meant to be, that our means of transport, our cars, they're all built on the foundation of carbon. We need carbon to survive. But that need is also, intertwined with, one of the most serious problems, obviously, is that's subject of climate change. That's why, the whole CO2 emission is something that is something that is the main central topic that is talked about. Now, carbon's been around a long time. It's been around since the beginning of the universe, and the Earth has a lot of carbon. In fact, it's around 65,000 billion metric tons. That's a lot, and most of it's stored in rocks. It's not stored in the atmosphere. Okay. So the rest of the carbon is in the ocean, it's in the plants, and then it's in the soils. It's released when things die. It's in fossil fuels. It's in the atmosphere. Now, of course, what they want you to focus on is what's in the atmosphere. The first thing I want to let you know is that only half of what they tell you is out there is actually in the atmosphere. There's only about a 40% residual left over in the atmosphere. What they don't want you to know is that carbon flows in a circle. It doesn't just hang out in the atmosphere forever. It is cleaned out in what's called the carbon cycle. Carbon does flow, and it flows between each reservoir, which would be, the land and the ocean. Those are the two main reservoirs. And it has a slow cycle and it has a fast cycle. And it's replaced and it's taken from the ocean, and it's deposited the rocks into the land, and it's and the ocean life, or mainly the plankton and stuff like that, they take in the CO2, and when they die, they fall to the bottom of the ocean. They create what's called corals and other types of calcium and carbonate type of structures and different things, and we've all seen them. And if you're lucky enough, you've been able to snorkel near them. That's exactly what those things are. So anytime there's a shift in the amount of production, and we see this, that human emissions make up, 9%? I've seen it as low as 5%. So it's anywhere between 5 and 10%. So we'll say around 7 to 8% are human emissions. But they want you to believe that all of those emissions from every single country. Now, take note that even though the United States has the second amount of emissions, we have actually lowered our emissions overall by 3 or 4-fold over the last decade or more. But they don't want you to they don't want you to believe that. They don't want you to know that the United States has always been the leader in lowering emissions. China and India and other countries like that have done nothing to actually lower what their emissions are. And everyone goes crazy over the Paris Accord and how we got out of it. But the reason why we got out of it is simply because other countries weren't doing anything. We were the only ones doing something, and we were paying for it. And we were actually forced to help other countries and give money to them for this stuff. And it just didn't make any sense when we were doing all the work. But that's the topic of another discussion. And of course, everyone freaked out because of that, you know. But the carbon cycle is what cleans the earth and cleans the atmosphere of a lot of the carbon that's out there. Now, if we didn't have any carbon in the atmosphere, guess what? We would be floating around in space on a solid rock of ice, because we would not be able to retain any type of cosmic rays. We wouldn't have a global warming. Global warming is a good thing. It happens because we do have those things in the atmosphere that actually reflect the light back. Now, do we want to have, you know, the fact of the matter is that the amount of actual parts per million of CO2 that's actually in the atmosphere on a time scale is actually pretty low compared to what it was hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years ago. It's a small fraction of what it used to be. Probably more like 1/10 or 1/7 or 1/8 or something like that. It's kind of low. Now, do we want to continue to pump more CO2 into the atmosphere? We would never be able to keep up with the land or ocean anyway. The land or ocean, we only put out probably for every 115 units, the land and ocean emits 26,000 units. And this is something that no one really wants to talk about, because this whole climate change thing and the whole climate change debate, it really doesn't fit too well with the carbon cycle. So the carbon cycle is something that no one wants to talk about, because it demolishes the whole human factor when it comes to emissions. It doesn't make it so important. And this is another thing I was talking about, and I wrote an article about, as far as the meat that's out there, the wonder meat, the make-believe meat that's not meat, that's made out of soy products and all other kinds of stuff. Because guess what? Cows are bad. Cows are causing all this stuff because of their CO2 and methane emissions. Well, we're all of this 8%, that's included in that as well. So if we were to get rid of all cows on Earth, we just did not eat meat anymore, then it would only lower emissions by an order of I believe it's 0.5%, and that's just of all human emissions. That's almost nothing. That's not going to do anything. And it's certainly not going to have any effect on the weather, because as we've already determined, the weather has nothing to do with what's going on as far as CO2. It has nothing to do with it. So, I mean, I really just wanted to get those three things across in this video, because it's really getting really irritating to me, because it seems like no matter where I turn, it's this climate change this and climate change that, and we need to get rid of our cars, and we need to ride around on bicycles, and we need to go live in a cave because we are completely ruining the environment. And that is simply not true. That is 100% a lie. It is something that you need to learn for yourself. I've given you enough resource, enough ideas to start looking if you want to. I really suggest that you do. This is something that needs to be done. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to be talking. I like to talk about a lot of different stuff, but this is one of the things that I feel like is one of probably the top 10 things that that really needs to be discussed on a constant basis, because of the progressive agenda out there that is trying to sweep everything under the rug in an attempt to gain and distort reality, to gain more power. And this is something that we need to fight back on. And we fight back not through ignorance or stupidity. We fight back with facts and truth. Until next time, I hope everyone has a good day. And again, don't forget to check out www.simpleliferemedy.org. Until next time, have a great day.